And I know this subject is piggybacking off of what has transpired with Molly's abrupt resignation, per se. But it is important to point out that guess what? You know, it doesn't have to be about her. But when you have
But it is.
negotiations and you're talking with people and you're going back and forth and you're hearing things that you may not want to hear or feeling things you may not want to feel, even though you're valued, even though people acknowledge those kind of things, we live in a world where we have to grow up. We don't get to define our own value. We don't get to define our own worth. We don't get to sit there and summarily say, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. And guess what? I don't give a damn what anybody say unless you have the leverage to do it.
Molly didn't really have value like that. Yeah, again, she was a pretty face, little Instagram model, can read a teleprompter. But a Molly Qerim, she doesn't bring real value to that show. They can always swap her out, put in another pretty face, and the show will go on. So Stephen A. Smith reacts to Molly Qerim leaving ESPN in First Take. Check out what he had to say, and then I'll come back with my comments.
Miss Molly Qerim, longtime host for ESPN's First Take, my day job, where she has been the last 10 years. Last night, she abruptly resigned as the host of the show. And to say that I'm quite sad about it is an understatement. Molly is a friend. Molly is a coworker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, as she has done when it comes to me. We've been partners on the show for the last 10 years. And a lot of times some of these things happen and it's just uncomfortable to see.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised she left. I know there's some contract issues or whatever the case may be, but I thought she would at least announce it if she were going to leave and then leave maybe at the end of the year. But for it to be abrupt, as soon as all the rumors and reports are coming out, she was gone the next day. So she didn't get to have her, farewell tour as far as, a couple episodes and some key moments. So again, Molly Qerim, not going to really be missed as far as the public. I don't really think they rock with her like that, but she did put in a lot of time at ESPN, and it was surprising the way she left ESPN First Take.
The details, quite frankly, are none of y'all business. But it's not as if I know all the details. It was a contract negotiation that was going on. ESPN certainly did not want to lose her. But in the event, but in the end, rather, she made a decision.
So it's none of our business, but you went ahead and pretty much said her business. It was a contract issue. So I like how Stephen A. Smith tries to be like, it's none of your business, don't worry about it. But then I'm going to spill the beans. I'm just going to let it be known to the public. So even though you may not go in full detail, it was a contract issue. Again, no surprises, but if you're Stephen A. Smith, you're crossing a line. People let you know certain details and you're privy to information at ESPN as one of the main players there. So for you to really put it out there like it's no one's business and then tell her business, that's violation.
To walk away from the show effective immediately, as you see from her Instagram post, her Instagram story last night. After much reflection, I've decided it's time to close this incredible chapter and step away from First Take. Hosting this show has been one of the greatest honors of my career. Every morning I had the privilege of sharing the desk with some of the most brilliant, passionate, and entertaining voices in sports, and with all of you, the best fans in the world. To be blunt, it came as a shock. I was not aware that this is something that she was contemplating doing.
Sure you
But in
won't.
the end, she made her decision. And we have to move on as a show. I don't like it. I'm not happy about it, because I appreciate her and what she has meant to me, what she has meant to the show, what she has meant to the network, what she's meant to the business. And I'm going to miss her. It's just that simple.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to miss her. I know y'all were homies, real good friends. But there were points during the show on ESPN First Take, Stephen A. Smith will be talking, then she'll interrupt him. I know she pushes the feminist movement at Disney and ESPN, so she was a perfect fit for that system, this new era in media. Got to make sure you have a female on board, make sure they push certain narratives. And I guess it worked. They built up a great friendship, and, it is what it is. Molly got to move on. I know Stephen A. Smith is heartbroken.
But we all make decisions that we deem to be in our best interest for whatever reason. And that story is for her to tell. Do I have an idea? Of course I do. Am I going to share it with you? No,
You
because
already
again,
did,
that's her story to tell.
but you're telling her story.
But I
Good
do
job.
think it's important that I started off the show by just acknowledging my love and appreciation for her and what she's meant to me and what she's meant to the show.
I'm sure you love her a lot.
Because over the years, over the last decade or so, the things that we've accomplished, she was right. She was right there. And we can talk about me being the star of my daily television show. We can talk about the contributors that have been stars as well. We can even talk about me doing this show right now. You know, it's a hell of a lot easier to have a second job when the first job is made so easy because you're working with somebody that makes it easy for you. And that's what she did for me personally.
Again, at the end of the day, Molly was a good looking face and she can read a teleprompter. She was a solid moderator, but at the same time, she interjected a lot. Look at the comments on the shows that she's on and the way that she cuts people off and tries to interject and push this whole movement going on. So again, I know that's your homie, your best friend and all that, but you ain't got a glazer, bro. You already know what this was. Again, it ended abruptly, which is a little surprising, but maybe there's some other money out there that she's going to get. She'll be perfect for, CNN, MSNBC, perfect fit. She's able to push those narratives on a political network. It'll fit more instead of a sports network if Molly joins one of those news networks.
And so because of that, I just wanted to wish her the best, let her know the love is always here from myself, from my personal assistant and my right hand, Sumatra, my security, Juvie, and my sister Carmen, and so many people that have loved her and loved on her over the years. We've got nothing but love for her. Having said that, I want to move on to a broader subject in regards to this. And this part is not about Molly.
You sure about
This
that?
part is about this industry because I know there's a lot of people that look at sports and, you think you can do this every day. News for you. You can't wake up and be Mad Dog Russo. You can't wake up and be Adam Shine. You can't wake up and be Stephen A. It takes work.
No, that's true. I had my comments about Stephen A. Smith and a lot of people on that network. But if you're entertaining, you got that value you can bring to a network. Yeah, it ain't easy, but it's much better having that platform, having those producers, having people that can write up a script for you, as far as people like myself and many other people on YouTube and their independent platforms. We don't got that necessary backing. So, again, respect to Stephen A. Smith. He does work hard, but again, you got that huge platform with ESPN and Disney.
It's not just about what you know. It's about what you know about your audience and how to deliver a product to an audience that they're receptive to and they want to embrace and they want to magnetize themselves to moving forward. We're looking at an age with podcasting, folks with their own YouTube channel, everybody aspiring to be their own boss and make their own decisions. But in the end, we all have people to answer to. And I know this subject is piggybacking off of what has transpired with Molly's abrupt resignation per se. But it is important to point out that guess what? It doesn't have to be about her. But when you have negotiations and you're talking with people and you're going back and forth and you're hearing things that you may not want to hear or feeling things you may not want to feel, even though you're valued, even though people acknowledge those kind of things, we live in a world where we have to grow up. And again, I'm not talking about Molly here, but I'm watching, and I've been watching over the last several years, people in this business fall by the wayside because we forget that all of us ultimately answer to people. We don't get to define our own value. We don't get to define our own worth. We don't get to sit there and summarily say, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. And guess what? I don't give a damn what anybody say unless you have the leverage to do it.
So essentially, Molly, even though she was your best friend, your BFF forever, you don't really got the power at ESPN like that to go ahead and write her a blank check and be like, go ahead and sign it. How much money do you want? Or whatever the case may be. So Molly didn't really have value like that. Yeah, again, she was a pretty face, little Instagram model, can read a teleprompter. That's cool, but unless you have real talent, real value, the network, they're not going to move mountains for you. So they'll do it for Stephen A. Smith. They'll do it for some of the contributors on the show. But Amali Qerim, she doesn't bring real value to that show. They can always swap her out, put in another pretty face, and the show will go on. So even though Stephen A. Smith is acting like he's not talking about Molly, to pivot to this conversation right after you saluted her, you're talking about Molly Qerim.
Because business is all about leverage. And I'm going to take this opportunity talking to this audience, giving you some insight into who I am and how did I think and how I think to make sure you understand where I come from. When you heard me at a time when we were discussing my contract negotiations all over the media and all throughout the sports world, what I talked about was what my worth was based on what the numbers showed. I talked about these are the ratings. This is the revenue. And I talked about, like I wrote in my book, Straight Shooter, a memoir of second chances and first takes, which was a New York Times bestseller, by the way.
Always shout out that book.
I said in the book, I wake up with two things every morning. Two thoughts of mine, prevalent most in my mind. How do I make my bosses more money? How do I get some of it?
Again, shout out to Stephen A. Smith for keeping it real. He living his truth right now. I know a lot of people be like he buck dancing, and which he is to a certain extent, but he knows that he has to make his bosses money, and he knows he has to get as much crumbs as possible after making Disney and his bosses as much money as possible. So he's telling it like it is. We all got 9 to 5s. We all work. We all have bosses. But for him to say it this way, he's feeding into that narrative. He knows the talk on YouTube, like, you know, he's going to do everything in his power to make his bosses money, but he's going to continue to stand on business like, all right, I know I got to make those bosses money and I'm going to get my $100+ million. So it is what it is, man. Shout out to Stephen A. Smith for telling the truth.
I'm going to repeat that. How do I get my bosses more money? How do I get some of it?
Standing on business.
Why do I say that? Because every one of us answer to somebody. For those of you out there with a YouTube channel, guess what? YouTube can flag your stuff and limit what you could disseminate to the masses. Over the airways of Sirius XM Radio, I have a beautiful deal with this company. I am incredibly happy. It doesn't escape me that Scott Greenstein is my boss. I work at ESPN. I'm incredibly happy with how I have been treated. Dave Roberts is my boss. Burke Magnus is my boss. Mike McQuaid is my boss. Jimmy Pitaro is my boss. Bob Iger is my boss.
Essentially, Stephen A. is saying, you know, disregard, you know, my big boss type of talk. I'm this powerful person. At the end of the day, I got somebody to answer to. He listed all his bosses with Sirius XM and ESPN and First Take and Disney. So no matter what you want to think about Stephen A. Smith, he's the biggest boss you ever seen. But at the end of the day, he's just a small crumb when it comes to Disney. Yeah, he's a big piece, but he's still a crumb when it comes to, you know, making money for his organization, for Disney, for ESPN, for Sirius XM. He's letting it be known like, look, I ain't got a problem with making as much money as possible for the bosses, and he's going to continue to stand on business. He knows the talks that are going on YouTube, but it is what it is. Say what you want to say, but he getting a lot of money out there.
This notion that everybody gets to do what they want to do, when they want to do it, how they want to do it, feeling whatever way they want to feel. When you got your hand out for other people's money, it doesn't work that way. And again, I'm not talking about Molly with all of this. Molly's a separate category.
No, it's not.
But the reason why I piggybacked off the topic of her to get into a more generalized discussion is because I'm seeing people in this business and beyond falling by the wayside and departing from places they don't need to depart from because their excellence at what they do is prevalent and relevant and flagrant, and they should be here. But it can all evaporate in a snap if you lose perspective.
Did Molly lose perspective? Did she think she was hotter than what she really was? Again, it's easy to attach yourself to the biggest name on ESPN and especially First Take. Without Stephen A. Smith, there isn't a First Take. I understand Molly knows Stephen A. Smith is making 20+ M's per year, 100+ million. So I guess she feels as though, you know what? If I'm making X amount of money and he got that huge pay raise, where's my pay raise? But Molly, it don't work like that. You don't bring the same value as Stephen A. Smith. Play your role, take your money. If there's a bigger opportunity out there, by all means, go ahead and grab that money. But I think she may have overplayed her hand, but who knows? Maybe there's something out there that we don't know about that we'll find out soon. But I think she dropped the ball by leaving First Take.
And you forget that everybody, and I mean everybody, answers to somebody. There's a beast that has to be fed. And along the way, sometimes it calls for you to make sacrifices you may not otherwise want to make.
Feed them bosses, by all means.
And what changed my life for the better, that made me a better professional, that made me a better man, was when I woke up and realized my primary objective in the world of business, in the capitalistic society that we live in, is to make somebody money and to be able to get some of it.
Again, I get what you're saying, Stephen A., but don't say that too much because your bosses at ESPN, they may have some, ideas on how to make the company more money. They know that you dislike the Cowboys for content. They may have you dress up in a Cowgirls uniform and diss the Cowboys. So be careful, Stephen A. Smith. I respect your hustle. I respect your grind. One of the hardest workers at ESPN, but don't keep saying you're going to do everything to make your bosses money. And that was a life-changing thing for you because you got bosses at everywhere that are looking at this like, okay, Stephen A's willing to make us money by any means necessary.
Because nobody gets to take it all for themselves. Even the bosses have to surrender resources and assets to people that are under them to make sure everything flows efficiently and fluidly. That's the world we're living in. And when you make moves, when I sat up there and I talked about what my worth was, it's because I knew I had leverage, because I had other opportunities. You don't say stuff like that when you don't.
Very true.
I did at that time. That doesn't mean that's going to be the case 5 years from now. Doesn't mean it's going to be the case 10 years from now or 15 years from now, or it was the case 20 years ago or 15 years ago when I was fired. But in that moment, that was my time. At some point in time, all of us, and this part includes Molly, frustrations come with everything in the world of business. There will never be 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There will never be a time when all of those hours, days, weeks, months, and years are clean, devoid of stress and strain that wears you down. But you have to make a decision as to whether or not it's going to break you.
Again, shout out to Stephen A. Smith for spilling the beans, telling all of Molly business. No one knew what was going on, but, Stephen A. Smith, he had to go ahead and rush to make this content. So it was a contractual type of thing. Guess it was a disagreement. Stephen A. Smith is making X amount. I guess she felt as though she was valued and maybe overvalued herself. And again, believe in yourself, but you got to be able to read the room, read the business room. They're not going to cut a massive check from Molly Qerim just to look pretty and to read a teleprompter. This isn't 20 years ago. You can easily swap out Molly Qerim for another Instagram model that knows how to read a teleprompter live on TV. There's some decent chicks out there that can do that. Again, no disrespect to Molly, but you overplayed your hand. Stephen A. Smith pretty much broke it down. You don't got leverage. You don't got the juice like that. You're not entertaining. You cut people off and you push this feminist movement, but Stephen A. Smith got to make sure he keep it cool. They were friends, very good friends, and he saluted her, but at the same time he let her know, like, you ain't got it like that. You're not me. You're not gonna get $20+ million. So we'll see what happens moving forward with Molly and her next moves in the very near future.